Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Linwood asked me to speak at this meeting about 6 months ago, and I've been looking forward to it, having not been to the Roundup for a while. And he initially told me it was Dr. Alcoholic Addict, and so I looked at that in the big book, and of course it's changed its title. It's now called Acceptance is the Answer, something like that. And that was amazing how the program works ourselves, because I've been sober. My sobriety date is February 10th, 1987, and my home group is the Big Book study at the AT Center in Silver Lake. Yesterday was our meeting, and Dr. Alcoholic Addict, that chapter was what we read, so it was good preparation. Because I was supposed to speak, of course, I thought I'd write a term paper, maybe do a thesis on the subject, and I realized that's ridiculous. I'll just come here and it's about a different chapter anyway. So the whole point is, I guess, professionals in sobriety, whatever professionals means in the general sense, I guess. All I can do is share my own recovery, what happened, what I was, what happened, and what it's like now. And I myself was born into a non-alcoholic family, loving, caring parents. There was no sex abuse, substance abuse of any sort, any of those things you hear a lot of. But I knew I was different, and I found out part of that was being gay, and part of it was I just thought I was put there from another planet, you know, that kind of a feeling, and I didn't quite belong, and I always had a feeling of impending doom, and the other shoe was about to drop from a little kid, even though I was raised by loving, reassuring parents. I don't know. Even when they finally discovered, I came out to them when I was in my early 20s, it's like they had already figured that out. And they accepted me, but I think maybe myself I didn't accept being gay, except in certain small circumstances, my gay friends and that kind of thing. But I'm digressing. Anyway, I like so many people at that time, went directly from high school to college, then I went to medical school, and then to postgraduate training and all that. I was thrust out into the world, having never really been on my own at all. I'd always been in this cocoon. And some people I know discovered alcohol and drugs at a pretty young age, but I was raised in a family where you weren't supposed to drink alcohol. It was a very restricted small town in Central California called Turlock, where everybody seemed around me belonging to the church, and you didn't drink, you didn't smoke, you didn't have sex, much less gay sex. And so I knew it was time to leave. And I did that when I was 18 or 19 to go away to school at Cal. And immediately discovered, like so many people tell it, I got drunk the first time I drank. I was about 19 or so. And a classic thing, I remember the first drink, and I remember getting drunk and how it felt. And I also remembered feeling a few days after that, gee, that wasn't very good for me, so I wouldn't do that for a while. And pretty soon I was off and running, though, drinking nights and weekends, the usual, controlling it, because I needed to keep, in my studies, so I kept drinking only, Friday night, Saturday night, that kind of thing, and was pretty good during the week. And then as I got older and away from, finished school and went to med school, finished that, and then was in my postgraduate training, I was drinking more and more. And pretty much by the time I was in my, around 29 or 30, I was in the throes of drinking almost all the time, and knowing that I had a problem. But I controlled it mostly to nights in the later part of the week, and not Monday and Tuesday. And then, of course, discovered other drugs along the way. cocaine and prescription drugs I would take on the sly because I was afraid of getting caught if I took my own prescription drugs. I didn't write prescriptions for myself. I hear that a lot. But I took cocaine then pretty much every night to the point where it was starting to interfere with my work. And fortunately, I was working at that time in a clinic I thought for quality of life reasons I should work 9 to 5, get a paycheck, all that kind of thing, and that's what I did. And the manager of the clinic sat me down one day because I was, I guess my performance wasn't so good. And I thought he was there to fire me, but he actually just said, what's wrong? And I told him, well, I have a problem with alcohol and drugs. So he said, get help or get out. And so I chose to get help. Years ago, I'd met other people that I knew that were in medicine, and they'd all gotten sober by about that time. This was 1987, and quite a few of them had gotten sober in the 80s. They were my old drinking buddies, drug buddies, that kind of thing. And one of them told me about the diversion program, which is, if you don't know about that, in California for physicians, nurses, I think at that time it included podiatrists and pharmacists as well. And most people got in there kicking and screaming because they'd been reported or they'd gotten into a great deal of legal problems. And I know a lot of that happened to people where they were basically caught red-handed doing something that was against the business and professions laws, and they were forced to go. Whereas this person who became my sponsor, convinced me, because he was in diversion, to just join up on my own, which I did. And it was a great help to be monitored. I had to go twice a week. And once you told them that you're an alcoholic and a drug addict, you couldn't leave. It was like nobody knew about it officially, but once I spilled the beans, it was on the record officially, but they kept it all separate. In this state, it's pretty good if you're from out of state. New York, for instance, if they catch you being an alcoholic drug addict and you're a physician or other professionals, I guess, I think they pull your license and say, come back in 5 years, we might let you work. Most of the guys in the program had been forced in there, and a lot of them were the angry, resentful, hated it. Oh, I hate this damn meeting. I hate having to give my urine, because twice a week we gave urines and went to meetings twice a week, and then, quote, had to go to meetings on the outside 3 or 4 times a week as well. But I thoroughly enjoyed that program. The mentor, that Jack Sano's been sober since the late 40s, and he's still around. He's an amazing guy. And he's still there for us when we call him later. People are having problems, what to do, and how to get people into help. But anyway, before I got sober, I did like what most everybody else did. I went through a lot of people's lives like a tornado. I had very chaotic relationships. Every boyfriend I'd ever been with was also in the same boat as I was with one for over 10 years. And we were basically alcoholics and ended up on the drugs. And then I had another relationship after that I met while I was drinking, and he was a violent drunk, so that lasted a few years. Then once I got sober, I met a sane person, actually, and it's an amazing change to have some kind of a loving, caring relationship. We've been together about 15 years, and the reason is because I think when I'm drinking and using, I'm going to go out and meet people in bars and places where you're taking drugs and all those other things, and it's not going to be a very appropriate relationship. But anyway, since I've gotten sober, just by getting out of the way, good things have happened. I made it through the diversion program. They keep you about 5 years. I think they let me out after 4. And I'm now, involved in trying to help others that need it or those that want it. And I like being involved in the well-being committee at one of my hospitals, because that's a very useful outlet for being of service. As you know, people in the different medical professions, you can do an awful lot of damage if you're out there drinking and using. And I've heard stories about people, performing surgeries and blackouts, all kinds of crazy things that happen. It's a pretty scary phenomenon. Years before, I'd worked at a clinic where several of us were alcoholics, and it was an amazing how we were able to keep it together, but we did. And I'm not aware that I caused any harm to anybody, and I'm thankful for that. I always think about that, drinking and using, that I never killed anybody driving. I never harmed anybody medically as far as I know. I never got in a wreck or ran over somebody on the street, you know, all kinds of things that could have happened, which I'm so thankful for. And I love the positive things about the program of giving me, you know, hope. I'd lost hope, and I had a lot of fear, had a lot of anger, a lot of guilt when I got sober. But I got back my hope and a positive outlook on life, and it's a wonderful feeling. What I do now is, what works for me is staying involved. I know people around me all the time that are having problems either staying sober or getting sober. One of my oldest friends is still struggling with the program, you know, and when you're in your 50s and still struggling with alcohol and drugs, it's not a very nice picture, you know. I've lost a lot of friends to this disease, lost a lot of friends through, you know, obviously HIV as well, but often it's so enmeshed with the drugs and the sex and the alcohol, and it's hard to separate which came first. But even the person that sponsors me is, after 20 years, had problems with slip, what he considers a slip. He was taking too many sleeping pills. And at least he knew what to do about it, and was getting help, because it's a very insidious disease. And I've always learned from meetings about what to do, which is, you know, go to meetings, work with others, be of service to others, and almost more important than anything, keep working on yourself. I think that's the key. Is like, you can't give up just working on recovery, because I do see people around that are so busy on sponsoring 25 people and being on committees and doing this, that, and the other things. They're wonderful things to do. But if you are then not going to meetings yourself and working on your own steps and doing all the things you need to do, it's tough to stay sober. And as far as relationships, I was very poor at them before. I sort of picked a victim. I wanted them to do things my way, and I'd kind of run the show, and that was the whirlwind tornado thing, and we'd get all enmeshed, and I would take responsibility for the other person's behavior. I'd be a codependent, alcoholic, drug addict, all of it, all at one time. And that's an impossible thing to keep up. It's too many roles. Whereas now with my partner, Bruce, we just, you know, he does his thing, I do mine. We're together working, looking forward, rather than all enmeshed trying to make the other person do it their way or his way or my way. And we have discussions, but not arguments. I've learned the difference. I used to think you had to say no, you had to fight, as opposed to you can just have a discussion and be sane about it. And in previous relationships, when I was drinking and using, it often led to violence of some sort, either on his part or my part. It was a pretty hairy thing. And a lot of it I don't remember, because you know, most of us drink and use, and at least me, to the point of having some blackouts, getting on the telephone, crazy behaviors, not knowing where we are, or what happened, or how we got there. And it's a pretty pathetic situation. But that's the thing that I like to leave when I'm trying to share, is the positive, all the positive things that happen by just staying clean and sober. It's not, life isn't nearly as dramatic as it used to be. It used to have huge ups and downs, the big, like a roller coaster, you know. And now things are generally on an even keel, and usually when it's off the track, it's usually because of myself, and I have to look in the mirror. I can only change myself. I can't change others. I know friends right now that are a couple that are having problems, and she called me last night what to do because her partner's drinking too much. And I said, well, come here. You've never been to it. Maybe come to the codependent meetings, and hopefully she will, to maybe learn about it herself too, because those of us that are also have codependency issues often are alcoholics and drug addicts too. And it's just by looking in the mirror and changing ourselves and basically trusting in God when all else fails. That's what we do. And it leads to just a much happier existence. And I guess we're supposed to have a little question period after this. Anybody have any questions? Paul.
Dr. Ray. This is a two-part question, and I've actually put together a to talk about this. Is there anything from your past? I mean, I know you were a drug-taking, drinking, carousing, hot-tubbing young doctor. Is there anything from that past that you miss? And then after that, how do you foresee your future as you go into your retirement as a sober physician?
Yeah.
A sober practitioner?
Let's put it this way, there were good times, but it's like that was like a curtain went down in it took me 3 or 4 years to get sober. I drank and used on and off and go to meetings and stuff, starting about 83 or 4, and then I got sober in 87. And from that time, what I kept, in the early years of my sobriety, still trying to act like that. I was famous for inappropriate relationships, people that were in their, it was okay when I was in my 30s, but I still kept dating guys in their early 20s. Then I got into my 40s, and I still kept dating guys in their early 20s. And I have friends like that. There's still ones in their 70s still dating guys in their early 20s, and it's really nice, but it's not the chance to build up much of a long-term relationship. So I miss some of the excitement and all that at times, but I know where it leads, because before I got sober, I never had sex without taking first alcohol and then often other drugs and maybe cocaine and then poppers too. And I had to give that all up, and therefore that obsessive sexual behavior went away. For a lot of people it hasn't. They have another issue they have to work on, the sexual compulsive problems. But so the answer to your simple question is, I fantasize about missing those old days, but in a sense I don't really, because I know what it required to do it. For me to go out and find 22-year-olds to have sex with would require alcohol, drugs, poppers, and everything, I'm sure. Because the urge for me to do that is pretty much gone, to go out and try to recapture that. In a sense, I'm more just nostalgic about it, and it's interesting, and it's I had some certainly very good experiences, but because of what the circumstances under and where it led to, I don't too much miss it. And as I'm getting older, that's something we all have to deal with in not just gay life, but everybody's life. It's like a new chapter, and I'm looking forward to getting older in a sense, as long as I hold up physically. But I realize we all have just a finite amount of time. When I was 20 years old, you could double or triple your age and you're still going to be in pretty good shape. And then you're 40, well, you double that, but now I'm 60. So I'm at the other end of the spectrum, and I'm wondering what happened to the last 40 years, except they passed, and you just accept it. And it's much more at peace and calm. I don't have that frenetic pace, and I'm a person who doesn't believe specifically in retirement. I believe I'd like to get out of having to face the everyday challenge of a private office with overhead and salaries and benefits and all that. And so what I'll probably do is just phase out having my own practice and maybe then work part-time for people, that kind of thing. And that's, I think, what I'll do, or donate time, because I enjoy the practice of medicine, but I don't always enjoy the business side. And that's the part I'd like to get rid of. And my father was a good example. He was a teacher, but he retired at 65 because he had to, I believe, at that time. But he kept substitute teaching till he was about 80. And I think it kept him going. And I look forward to being able to do that and to donate time. I have interests that I'd like to give time to. I really love the Van Ness House and some of those other programs like that, help there. Also in the program more, maybe give time at central office, I think I would do that. Then I'm interested in music, so like help volunteer at the LA Chamber Orchestra, something like that. And just, that would be other things to do. most of us don't have passions that are of a hobby type nature or of an ability. If you're a great artist or a great writer or something, there's no problem. You can do that. But I don't have those talents. I know people that try to develop them as they retire, but for me, I think I'll just do what I described.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
Hi, I'm Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Thank you, Doctor, very much for your share.
Call me Ron.
I've always had, I'm not clear of why we call alcoholism an addiction a disease. Because I'm always thinking the disease is something more like biological, something more that we can catch one person to another. Can you help me understand why we call it a disease?
Well, a disease is something to me that's partly genetic, and in my family, everybody's either, on both sides, either teetotalers or alcoholics and drug addicts, and so everybody sort of goes along with the fact in medicine that there has to be some genetic component. And a lot of things are, let's say, genetically inherited with incomplete penetrance, that you don't necessarily get the full-blown disease, you inherit them, but then some other factor comes along, like you inherit type 1 diabetes, the genetic predisposition, but it doesn't hit you till you get a virus, usually mumps or something, that's probably the cause of type 1 insulin-dependent diabetes. And other diseases of maturity, like adult onset diabetes, or often hypertension even, or high cholesterol, which is related to premature heart disease and death, are brought on often by lifestyle choices. Obesity, lack of exercise, it's called the metabolic syndrome. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, overweight, heart disease, and they're all interrelated. And the treatment is diet and exercise. So, and I don't think people would say those aren't diseases. And there's a treatment for it. I think of meetings as being if I had diabetes, would be the insulin to treat my disease or my blood pressure pills. And as long as you keep on the treatment, then the disease is in remission for that period. But you stop the treatment, the disease will come back. But maybe it's just for ease of description to call it a disease in the same sense too, but it works for me. And I think that those other things I mentioned are similar in the sense that they're treatable and return when you stop treatment.
My name's Justin. I'm not Paul.
Hi, Justin.
Thanks for your share. Had you always wanted to practice medicine, and said like jumped right into college and stuff like that? Was that hard for you? Like, did you have to like grow up real fast and like make decisions and just go with them? I mean, was there like any transition period? I mean, you feel that you may have wanted a little more experience of being on your own before jumping into like the college?
Yeah. Good question. When I was a kid, from a very early age, maybe first grade, they were already talking about college, and it was just like this concept, you would just do it. And came from what we called a middle-class family, but a single teacher salary income, so there wasn't much money, so we knew it was going to be through the state college system, which fortunately in the state's very good. The University of California and the state system are good and moderately priced. And so I knew that I couldn't fall back on my parents to support me, and they wouldn't be able to send me to college. And so I realized by the time I was in the 6th or 7th grade that I thought I wanted to be a dentist, not a doctor, a physician. And so that's what I sort of talked about all the way through high school. I want to be a dentist like my uncle. I had several uncles in the healthcare field of different sorts, physicians, dentists, optometrists, that kind of thing. And so that was all, and a long history on my mother's side of physicians going back to the early 1900s, and that was just sort of the role model. Like in some families it's lawyers, in some families it's ministers and so forth. But the concept of going to college was not open to questions, just like you would go to high school, you would also go to college, and then do postgraduate work. And I bought into it from an early age and loved school. I always did. And I didn't like summer because I looked forward to school starting in the fall. And I was pretty good at it, and it gave me the energy, something to focus on. And maybe in retrospect, should I have taken some time off? I don't know, but after I was about finished with I was halfway through my undergraduate, I had to take the dental college admission test and would have gotten in, but I realized from that I didn't want to be a dentist. And I realized then, I was 20 years old, I'm not sure what I want to do, and I had no way to make a living, so the choice of medicine has always been in the background, but I didn't quite think I was up to doing that. I thought that maybe the dental school would be more to my liking, but turned out that worked out fine. And again, things lead to where you don't really expect. Started out to do one thing, ended up doing another, and then in my field where there's so much of it is new things that didn't exist when I first went into it. It's I'm just glad that I did what I did, because it's led to treating things that didn't exist before, like HIV. And I don't know if that answers it.
Bill, I wondered, I heard that before I went into treatment, I didn't really realize that, I thought, alcohol is man-made, how can it be, how can it be genetic? And then I read on the internet, I attended a seminar while I was in the hospital, and then I read on the internet that the liver and the body of an alcoholic breaks down acetone into sugars. The liver can't do that because the liver is damaged. The buildup of acetone in the body of an alcoholic makes the body crave more alcohol. So I wondered if that was true. And also, my sponsor told me that THIQ, tetrahydroisoquinone, is deposited in the brain. And that in 10 years, even though I don't drink, I'll have more of a tolerance for alcohol. Is that true too?
I don't know about the last subject. I haven't read on that, but good question. Just the effects of alcohol in the body is it's a toxin, it's a solvent. Think about alcohol. But as far as the body's amazing having enzymes to break down substances that don't exist yet. Just like there's a substance to break down Valium in our system, but it wasn't used until Valium came along. Amazing to me. But also there's one called alcohol dehydrogenase, an enzyme to break down alcohol before people ever started drinking alcohol. And from my understanding is it's greatly increased when you drink. That's why you build up tolerance. But the toxicity level is still the same. To actually get toxic and to die from alcohol poisoning, that does not change much. That's true of a lot of other drugs, heroin and so forth, is you can build up tolerance because your body can metabolize it quicker, so you need more and more. But the lethal level, I believe, stays somewhat similar sometimes. And as far as damage to the brain, I don't know the exact mechanisms. I know that it just causes scarring and so forth in the brain, in the liver, in the nerve endings in general. That's why alcoholics get neuropathy. And some are more predisposed to that in different ethnic groups. I know that.
It doesn't actually do damage to the brain. It deposits tetrahydroisoquinone, and that's a synthetic. It looks like synthetic heroin. A doctor at Newton discovered it, and that's why when you cut open the brain of an alcoholic, you have something resembling synthetic heroin. And I think that's what makes you. I don't understand that performance about that. But I was wondering if it's true, like in a year, will I have more of a tolerance for alcohol?
That may be what you're talking about is something like the endorphin system. I'm not exactly sure. But the alcohol directly does damage to the brain, and that's why they call it, people that get sober, wet brain, because they've done physiologic damage. I have an uncle who lost the ability. He was smart and bright to the end, but he couldn't walk because the alcohol had destroyed his cerebellum function, which is balance. And how long have you been sober, if I may ask?
11 months.
Good for you. Most my understanding is once you stop drinking alcohol, your alcohol dehydrogenase levels drops again, and so that your tolerance is lost, and so you would get probably drunk very quickly again. I built up a tolerance for drinking probably a pint or so a day, a little more than that. I don't think I ever hit a quart a day, but I mixed it with a lot of things and could not appear sort of not too drunk. That's why I'd go have 3 or 4 drinks before I went to a party, not appear too drunk, and then start drinking, and pretty soon be just snockered because I was getting up to that level of my tolerance. And for some people, you hear the stories about actors that, you know, supposedly drank 2 quarts a day of gin or whatever. I just can't imagine, but they do. Yeah.
I'm Gene. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Gene.
Thank you for your share. Can you talk a little bit about, through your career, anonymity in your profession, both with your addiction and alcohol and also being gay?
Yeah, both are a progressive enlightenment on my own part, I guess, of just being less fearful of what people think, what people will say, and what... my sponsor was a good example because he was at the hospital where we both practice. He's out, and he's known to be the gay person and the alcoholic drug addict that people can come to. And I do that to some degree. Let's say if you go to see a physician, whether you're straight or gay, he usually doesn't say, hi, I'm gay, or I'm straight, or I have kids, or I don't have kids, or I'm this or that. You eventually get into that. And I always, if anybody ever asks, I just tell them. But most people at work, well, at work I'm completely out in my office. And around anybody that knows me at the hospitals I work in, they both know that I'm in the program and gay because I'm chairman of like the well-being committee, and I'm the person they call when they think a colleague is getting out of hand and needs maybe some help before they crash and burn. So in a sense, I think it's good to be out as far as an alcoholic, because at some of the hospitals there is no system to try to intervene and do an intervention on somebody before they crash and burn, and then it's a little late. Another thing with patients, that comes up fairly frequently. I don't tell patients, yeah, I'm in the program. What happens is they'll often bring up the subject along the way, because I try to quiz people about sexual history, whether they're straight or gay, and alcohol and substance abuse history, along with their regular medical issues, just in the same tone, and I am totally non-judgmental about it. I just like to know to be an issue or get into it. And try to be comfortable with people with sexuality too, because a real problem is people that are in the closet in both areas, sexually and alcohol and drug addiction wise, because they'll be out doing dangerous sexual things, for instance, or also having medical problems from alcohol and drugs that you need to attack that first. And at that point, if it comes out that I mention the program, and often will then bring in the fact, by the way, I've been in recovery for, you know, whatever it is, 17 years, and it just seems like a natural thing. Even I'll offer to meet them at a meeting, so that's how it works for me. Any other questions, or? Yeah. Most of you people from LA, I think so. Everybody here that I see. Yeah. I've seen people from different places here, so that's good. Oh, good for you. Out here for a visit, or are you here
Yes,
to?
yes.
Good.
My son.
Oh yeah, good. Glad to have you here.
I thoroughly enjoyed your sharing.
Thank you.
Really. And I also must say, all right, my son is gay, and so I hope you accept me just because I'm straight. And,
We all have straight mothers if they're still alive.
yes.
Mostly, not all of us, mostly.
But I know when Greg came out that, you know, he was gay and everything. Of course, I was shocked because, I mean, this kid is my kid. And I have a straight son, too. And, but you know, Greg, I think even more so by him coming out, I've learned to understand him more. I mean, he's a sweetheart. He's a wonderful guy. And he's alcoholic. My straight one just found out through the law that he is alcoholic, which I knew it many years ago.
Yeah.
But actually it was my son that got me into the program. And I'm sure I've been an alcoholic all my life. But it really came out after my husband's death, and which he's been gone for 15 years now. But I have met many people. I even think that gay people are much more honest and open about a lot of things. And I feel very comfortable with them. I can remember, you know, when I was in Florida one time, I had to go to, one of the meetings. And you'd be surprised, the hypocrites. And, I knew some gay girls and everything, and I liked them. They were good friends. And I wasn't supposed to hang around with them. I just, you're fired. That's it. I mean, she was perfectly fine. I mean, a good person. It doesn't matter their gender or anything, as far as I'm concerned. And I know actually between both my sons, my gay son treats me beautifully. And my other son, he's more closed, and I'd love to be there in this program. I really would. But anyhow, he's being forced to, but I'm very happy. I've got 2 grandchildren, and he was bad. He was bad. But, he ended up 6 months in jail, and,
Wow.
On probation, lost his license for 8 years. And he's a businessman.
That's the thing we don't think about. It's if we could intervene on people earlier, then those unnecessary things don't have to happen. I have it happening in my family. My brother-in-law won't get sober, and my nephew. And they just keep accumulating problem after problem, including now medical problems. So it's all tied together.
I remember, probably 7 years ago, I read the book Listening to Prozac. It was recommended by a therapist at the time. And it was like when the antidepressants had just came out, they were talking about how diabetes, alcoholism, and depression kind of revolve around the same part of the brain, or the same thing, and that people who have diabetes in their family also generally have patterns of depression and alcoholism. Would you agree with that? Do you find that to be true?
I don't know statistically if that's true.
They said it all revolved around sugar, that basically alcoholism was just a problem with sugar because alcohol is a sugar.
I've not seen that in print otherwise, but I think there is a association of obsessive compulsive behavior and alcoholism, overeating, sex, gambling, debt, all these things that we have programs for now. And I think they're interrelated, and that's the pleasure centers of the brain and the serotonin and the tryptophan and the norepinephrine that these antidepressants work on. That's how the new drug that supposedly stops the craving for alcohol called Camprol works, probably on those pleasure centers, or at least the craving part of it. But again, that's not a perfect pill either, because my brother-in-law tried it and he was drinking while still on it, on the Camprol, because he doesn't want to stop. That's the other thing. A lot of diseases, they say, you don't have a choice. With alcoholism, once you're sober, you do have a choice. But you could also say that about overeating and obesity and high cholesterol and all those interrelated problems. If you diet and exercise, that's a choice to do that would at least downregulate some of those kinds of problems, not maybe cure them. But I don't know the specifics about just sugar and alcohol.
Ron, I was just going to ask you about that pill. I've heard people discussing it more and more during the course of the convention.
It just started because it was just released a couple months ago.
Right.
Camprol, I forget the generic name, C-A-M-P-R-A-L.
No, but if a patient came to you and was dealing with alcohol problems, would you recommend something like that as a...
It would be something to me that's patient-driven, like so many things now. It gets out and they ask for it. But I would more emphasize the 12-step program, just like I don't recommend people go into detox and rehab unless they really need detox and rehab. A lot of people need detox, but the rehab part, in my personal opinion, is 30 days of enforced sobriety, which you can do with meetings and all that if you'll do it. But if you can't, then you have to. You know, it's not like there's not one size fits all. A few years ago, they were using Revia, which I think is off the market. It was something, again, to stop cravings for opiates, I believe. But it also seemed to work on alcohol. And I had patients that would request it, and a couple did stay sober. But in the end, no pill is going to keep you sober. I mean, it's what it takes. It used to be Antabuse, which made you throw up if you took it. But it was more, if a patient came and they were really seemed motivated, maybe I would give it to them for a short time. If craving is a major issue with some people, for me it was a moderate issue, but like with time, we have to give ourselves time to.
Do you think that would be an enhancement to a program? Like, you know, in conjunction with, I know when they talk about stop smoking, they say, you know, go on the patch, go to Nicotine Anonymous, call the helpline and all this. They say the more you do, the better your chances. Do you think that in conjunction with the program?
Oh, absolutely. Just, I don't expect it to be a panacea. We want in all society now, I think not just this country, take a pill and it'll go away, or a simple fix to a complex problem. And the whole thing to do is, if that would help to get them started, I think the hook is to get people in so they'll get into a program of self-examination and then being willing to change. Yes.
Tony.
Hi, Tony.
Thank you for your share.
Sure, Tony.
Appreciate it. It's kind of a touchy subject, but it comes up here and there in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's about drugs for antidepressant drugs. And usually, you know, a lot of people say they can't speak on it because they're not a doctor, but you are. Can you talk a little about that, and in conjunction with AA? And maybe your opinion on that, or your experience with that?
Sure. The whole concept of medication, I guess it's the intent. Am I seeking a pill to make me high, as opposed to taking it for a therapeutic reason that's prescribed for a specific reason, and if necessary, given by a surrogate, second person, to make sure you take the right number of pills? And to me, alcoholism and depression are somewhat two separate problems. I think if you have an alcoholism problem, you need to go to AA, and if you have a depression problem, you need to go to a psychiatrist and psychotherapist. And if therapy isn't helping it, medication, of course. And just like if you break your arm, you need pain pills. But after your arm heals, you don't need to take 3 Vicodin every 2 hours, you know. I mean, some people, that's a separate issue. And but I know people that have a problem of abusing pain medicines when they claim they had a physical injury, then they went on and got re-addicted. But again, that's how they separate. When I got sober, I went to a psychiatrist for several months because it was felt by the powers that be around me that I should do that, and I got a lot out of it. He didn't think I needed medication, but if he did, I would have taken it. But I hear people in AA that supposedly tell people to stop their antidepressants, or that they're no good, or that they're going to ruin your sobriety. And I honestly feel that depression is an illness that has a treatment, as long as it's done properly. There are also people that are looking for a doctor to find the treatment so they can get the pills they want. For instance, do you really have attention deficit disorder, or is it that you want stimulants? If you have the true diagnosed illness and take the pills as they're prescribed, that's one thing. As opposed to, I see people that are alcoholics, drug addicts, and also kind of crazy that end up on a whole panoply of pills. And so much of it, I wonder, they think they're better, but they seem crazier. So maybe if they stop the Vicodin and the stimulants and the sleeping pills and the pain pills, maybe they would get better. So it's not a simple thing.
Hi, I was told by a couple of people after you stop drinking, if you are a heavy drinker, which I was, that you could be depressed depressed for a year, two years because of that. And then my neighbor who does alcohol rehab for a living said, no, that's not true. He read that in a more severe alcoholic. That after 6 months, even 3 months, their brain chemistry was back to normal. And also, is it possible for an antidepressant to take 2 or 3 months to wear off?
Antidepressants effect, certainly lasts several months and takes several months to get onto for them to work properly. But let's see. As far as, I'm sorry, what was the first part of that?
First part was, I was told, see, when I got our treatment, I was happy.
Oh, the depression part, yeah, excuse me. Well, alcohol is a depressant, and for me, I felt better once I stopped drinking, but I had a problem with the cocaine because that was a stimulant, and I was kind of depressed. But if we want, I think, to get better immediately, and I think sometimes it just takes some time, and I firmly believe from when you get sober, I drank and used for 20-some years, and I wanted to get better right away. I think if you give yourself a few years to get your sensibilities back, your marbles back, and give you a few more years to figure out what to do with them, it'll all work itself out. And are you talking about somebody just feeling down versus clinically depressed, which is you can't move, you can't function, and whatever? That's a little bit different than just feeling blue. So.
Well, is it possible for an antidepressant to take 2 or 3 months to wear off?
After you stopped it, the effect certainly could take a period of, I would imagine, several weeks. I don't know any actual numbers on that myself. I don't. Let's see here. I think we're about finished here, huh? So after a moment of silent meditation, let's say the Serenity Prayer.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.